Welcome to the Abundant at the Top podcast. I'm Brittany Fox, your host. Have you ever had just one of those days that you're not feeling it, you're having a bad day, but you got somewhere to go? This was me on Tuesday. I had a women's networking event to go to. It's a group I'm a part of. Several of the ladies from my community were going to be there, and I love seeing them, and I knew they would uplift me. But the question, do I show up and how do I show up, pops into your head, especially as someone who is a leader, who's a high achiever, who is leading the charge. How do you show up? And in the personal development space, you often hear about changing your state, the language that you use, the words that you say, and we all know it's true. It creates our reality. When do we show up and be vulnerable and say what is actually happening? So this is the thoughts that I was contemplating in my head before I showed up at this group. And I just knew I couldn't put a mask on. I knew that this was one of those days that things are really hard and I can't pretend like everything is just peachy. Monday was a really hard day for me personally, and I was still going through all the raw emotions. One thing that often happens, I believe, that I had seen and conditioned myself even, is to not feel the emotions when going through a hard time. Just skipping right to the reframing, to the change of the state. But what I've learned is we have to sometimes just feel the raw emotions and let them be okay. And while I still went to this event, which I always say, get in the room, ladies. It changes everything. It really does. So I got in the room, but I showed up as who I was at that moment. I showed up with my stuff. And it's not that you show up and you vomit all over people and tell them all your stuff, right? But when people say, how are you? And they know you and you can't hide it, you open up a bit, right? And depends on where you are. And so I ended up sharing with someone a little bit about what was going on in the challenge. And we had the conversation, and I still was just like, oh, like the day, like just this is just not it. And the theme was something major is about to happen. We had this speaker come in, and it was amazing conversation. One of the topics we talked about, actually, and this is a thought that I've really been contemplating, was as high achievers, as women in business, how do we really lean into our feminine through a leadership perspective? Not just, I think sometimes, especially me, I think of the feminine as, oh, well, then I need to be all spiritual led. I need to be a yoga instructor, and that's what it looks like. And that is it. But how do we balance that in business? And who are the women who have done this? And I had this conversation with a friend, and we had a really hard time coming up with the example of who's actually truly done this. So if you know someone, send them to me. I want to find these women out there because I know they're out there, they're doing their stuff. But one of the breakthroughs through that conversation that we kept talking about was the feminine leadership often looks like listening to our intuition, of that inner knowing of the decision, which it's hard to explain sometimes, especially even if you're a high achiever and you're factual and you're logical and you look at the data points. But sometimes we just have intuition that we need to follow. And I feel like that's what I did when I showed up. My intuition said, Brittany, don't change your state. Don't act like you have it all together today, and just show up as your raw, authentic self. And that's what I did. And I was able to have different type of conversations, but I still left there and I was just like, still that day, still that bad day. And I ended up actually having a therapy session right after that event. I was really excited about it because I thought, this is it. She's finally going to understand what is going on in my life. I have so much information to share with her. She's going to get it. And oftentimes we go to therapy and we think we're going to be validated, or that they're going to agree with something that's going on in our life and why it's so challenging. And of course, there are, yes, that's happening. And you get the reframes, you get the tools, you get all the things that come through therapy and or coaching. Well, this is therapy, and I think it's a little bit different of a style, right? Because you're dealing and you go back so much of, well, why is that bothering you? Why? And let's really keep going through the layers. And that's what ended up happening was I had the awareness of what was happening in a specific situation. It was very aware to me, but as I peeled back the layers and became aware of what's actually going on a deeper level, what happened was I had seen this potential. I see this opportunity. I know things can be better. I know if it just looked like this, then this would be great. But the fact was, I was arguing with reality. I was arguing with my current situation. Well, yes, the potential is there. Well, yes, things could look better. That part was out of my control because I was doing everything I knew I could do in this situation, what I believed. But come to find out, there was even more that I could be doing. And it comes back to focusing on what we can control and becoming aware. So I became aware of one, that I was arguing with reality, that I couldn't see past also my pain in this situation. And I couldn't get to the place of seeking to understand. One of the golden rules to really understand a situation, to understand what's happening in a relationship or with another person, is to seek to understand first. And sometimes we think we're doing that, but we're doing it through the lens of our own pain. That's what I was doing. I couldn't see past my own pain that I sought to understood on with the lens of my pain still there. But when you can get past the pain that you're experiencing and really seek to understand, well, why did they do that? What's going on a deeper level? And we can really ask those questions. We can get another awareness of what's happening and why maybe that action was taken or why that situation keeps coming up again when we really seek to understand. That's what happened to me. I became aware and I sought to understand. That was so huge for me. And I took the day and I was really processing these different awarenesses that I was having and understanding. And I got to a place where I was even able to have compassion in this situation. Oftentimes we want things as black and white. Is it yes or no? Is this right or is this wrong? But when we can peel back the layers and understand that the human experience is complex, that there's so many layers and there's so many things. The other thing I realized through that when I talked about why is it that if I'm doing everything I can, why am I still being triggered? And when I realized that I still had things that were, and I don't like using that word either, right? Like, I mean, we hear it everywhere. It's like the TikTok sensation of I'm triggered, I'm triggered. And also looking at, okay, well, maybe why is that still bothering me? Why am I still reacting this way? And what do I need to continue to work on with myself? That was something else that came to me that I still have work to do. Because while once you become aware and you seek to understand, and you might understand why that person is behaving a certain way, you're able to make decisions from a more clear place. But when you still have your reactions coming up, your decision making of making a decision is not going to be as clear. So I knew that once I got this clearer understanding of what was happening in this situation, I was able to make a better decision. Because before I was looking at making very different decisions. When I was seeing through the lens of my pain, I was going to make different choices. But once I really sought to understood and I had that level of awareness of what was going on, I was able to make different decisions. Okay, so I have this therapy session. I'm processing it all day. I'm thinking about it. And I also, that morning, had a conversation. I started recently volunteering at the local animal shelter. And my Luna back here, she was a rescue pup. She was dropped off at a park near my house. And a total manifestation story. I'll tell that for another day because I wanted a black female rescue dog. And then she showed up in my life 5 minutes later. She's such a sign to me of one, the power of manifesting and the thoughts that we think. Be careful because it might just become a reality quicker than you think. And two, she reminded me of wanting to volunteer again because when I first started my career and I graduated college, I actually worked at a nonprofit organization. And the way I grew up, we were always giving to other people and volunteering, and I haven't done that in a while. So I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, Miami-Dade Animal Services, and I just became so aware of the problem of how many dogs, it's overpopulated. And my friend, she told me, she's like, you need to stop going. You're going to be depressed. And I just started doing this. And I said, yes, but what am I going to do about it? I've already seen this. I've already seen this problem. I can't unsee what I've seen. So I know that I can contribute. And what I love about when I go there is that I have to be so present. This was such a beautiful thing for me, especially when you're going through a hard season and you're so focused on what is going on in your life. And even if you're not going through a hard season, when you're so focused on self, when we do something like volunteer, it puts us in a different state. But what I love about volunteering this specifically is that You get there in this specific place, and I think a lot of them are like this, the animal shelters, is that it's chaotic. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of like barking, and it's chaotic. You have dogs that you're walking, you have to be hyper vigilant that they're safe, that they don't get in a dog fight, that they don't bite you. Like there's so many things. But when you get them out to, say, their playpen or you're on the walk with them, you have 10, 15 minutes to bring this dog joy and love. And that's all it's definitely going to get that day. And who knows the next time it's going to be walked. The next time it's going to be walked is the moment that someone else decides to show up. The moment that someone else decides, it only takes one to make a change. That's what I realized is I oftentimes, when I think about these problems in the world, that I get overwhelmed because as a high achiever, I want to solve them and just make a big impact. But sometimes making a big impact starts with one decision, starts with one small action. That's what I love about volunteering, is that I know that I'm going to bring joy to one dog that day, to one human that I'm going to interact with at that shelter that day, that I'm going to volunteer with. And it just starts with one. And sometimes we can overcomplicate things, but I love what it does for me. It makes me feel fulfilled. It also just makes me so present. And you realize that while we do have real problems, we do have real challenges in our life, that there's also other challenges in the world that are going on. What I'd encourage you this week is to get in the room, whatever room that is. If you're going through a hard day, still show up. If you are been wanting to volunteer and give, I mean, the holiday season, people think about that a lot, but start now and change happens with one person. That's it for this episode of Abundance at the Top. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast. This is just the beginning. Follow me on social, BE Foxy, Foxy, on Instagram, and check out the school community for all of the she creators out there doing magical things. Stay tuned.